So, after my last video, I was pondering over what my next challenge should be, even trying to figure out which game it should even be covering. Well, the responses to my last few videos covering Mad Max have been so overwhelming that, well, of course, here I am again, doing another one. This challenge was also recommended to me in a comment that I just couldn't seem to find, but I took the base of that comment and pushed it to its limit, as I usually do. The comment read something along the lines of, can you beat Mad Max without drinking any water, or like no healing or something? But see, there's a couple problems I saw right out the gate with this challenge. The main one being that anytime you die, quit to the main menu, or reload a save, Max's health will just be fully replenished. So, sticking with the theme of this challenge idea, I began perusing around Mad Max's Nexus page and actually found a few mods worthy of compiling into a fun little challenge. Today, I present to you the Mad Maximum Difficulty Challenge. There aren't so much as like rules to this run as there are aspects of a few mods that I found that would ultimately make the game more difficult. So the mods I have installed for this run are Toggle HUD, which obviously gives you the ability to toggle the HUD on and off, as well as a few more things that I'll get to later. The second one was Thirst and Hunger, and this mod was supposed to have a ton of features such as losing all scrap on death, taking more damage than a vehicle, and a sanity aspect. But unfortunately, only a few minor pieces actually work. The third mod I had installed was called Hard Difficulty, and this mod will make enemies as aggressive and deadly as the game will allow them to be, overriding the game's hidden difficulty mechanic. The fourth mod was a one-hit KO mod, and it's pretty self-explanatory. The fifth would be the Hooning Enhancement for the Opus, basically turning it into a drifting machine, giving it way more torque and way less grip. And the sixth and last mod that I had installed was called Scrapulances Respawn. And, it respawns Scrapulances. Go figure. So, the game starts off as normal, though it appeared as though the Toggle HUD mod wasn't quite working properly, but I'd resolve that somewhere along the way. The important thing to note here is that it would be gone when it mattered the absolute most. But anyway, just like how every other Mad Max run starts, we're awoken and led by a four-legged friend over to this hunchback-having creature known as Chum. I convinced this creature to put his fork and knife down and spare the dog's life by rolling a nat 10 on my intimidation check. Editor Vetter here, not sure why I said nat 10. I clearly wrote nat 20, and that's what I meant. Don't know why I said that. Anyway, I meant nat 20. After making nice and finding common ground, I went off to find some spare wire so that I could fix this thing's buggy. I'm able to take care of this first group of enemies with really no problems, and at this point, I still have my HUD, so the parry prompts are extremely visible. Once the buggy is made whole again, we load up and ship out to scout out the surrounding areas for any enemy presence, as well as the place we could hunker down in for now. Chum's Sanctum was just down the dune we were atop, so after I was finished scouting, we drove off to safety. Upon arrival, Chum presented us with what he's dubbed the Magnum Opus, but all I see is a car frame with an engine and 4 wheels. However, at least he knows of a place where we could loot a body for this thing, but we'd have to go under the cover of darkness. Come nightfall, we took off in the Opus as planned, but had to stop off to get some gas as my tank apparently had fallen off along the way. I had to fight a couple of enemies at a nearby camp in order to obtain some of this liquid gold, but upon leaving, I realized that I'd forgotten the gas, and only found this out because one of my mods apparently allowed me to continue driving, even on an empty tank. Also, it's likely that this same mod was also responsible for limiting the horsepower of the Opus, making it feel like it only had one gear. But worry not, I'll be fixing this fairly soon.
Yo, I didn't get gas. How am I driving right now? I just realized that.
Getting into the graveyard proved to have more challenges than I anticipated, and mostly due to the blast radius of their fucking dangly man-killers being obscenely large. Once I'd gotten through the gauntlet though, I'd make my way up and over to the platform at which I could select the car body I wanted to roll with. Except, on my way up, I'd get formally introduced to a special someone. Someone who, I didn't know at the time, was plotting against me from the very fucking start. Someone who would eventually become my mortal enemy. An enemy I was incapable of fighting, let alone defeating. That someone was Gravity. Anyways, after that lovely meeting, I moved on to choose the Wild Hunt car body, as it's my go-to for its style. But it also grants me the advantage of not needing to go out of my way to find it later to build the Speed Demon. The buzzards that spawn in after making my selection were really no issue either, since I still had my HUD on full display, and their parries were easy enough to telegraph with that big-ass mouse icon hovering over their heads. As you'd expect, I managed to escape out from there and get back to the Sanctum, even though I was still stuck with the Opus apparently having only one gear. Chum had enough spare parts lying around our Sanctum to build us a new bumper and harpoon for the Opus, allowing us to start tearing down Scrotus's landmarks around the starting area. Once I got into the camp located in here, there's really not much to report on from here. I died quite a bit from some really stupid things, and wasted a bunch of time failing the very last fight, but ultimately, I'd make it through. I'm only glossing over this section because there are much harder sections to come, and I don't really want to dwell on all this small stuff too much. Once the camp was gone and the scarecrows were toppled, I can now visit Griffa and spend with him the tokens I've earned up to this point. I settled for buying Judgment, Volition, and Intuition, since anything health related wasn't going to be any use to me here. After meeting with the Magic Man, I installed the Nitrous to the Opus, took out the 2 spotters scouting the area, and made my way back to the Sanctum to begin Act 2. This act begins with me and Chum racing Stankum's men to the side of our Sanctum being blown to bits. Fuck. The only thing we could do for now was get the hell out of here and find somewhere else to seek refuge so we could continue working on getting our black on black back. Building up this Opus to be the most badass Dune Drifter Chum has ever seen. Unfortunately, Jeets was the only spot Chum could think of, even if it was going to be a long shot. Speaking of long shots though, upon arriving at Jeets and having him welcome us inside, we get a long shot of our own. And for all you normies, that's Australian for sniper rifle. Once that's crafted, we can now set off to Dead Baron's Pass and scout out the Jaw. However, I took a page out of the speedrunning playbook and went straight for Hollow Point, and I'll get into why in just a second. On the way over here though, I'd pull a car out of the sand for another easy legend rank, then continued into the camp. Now, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. There's an incredibly simple way to complete this camp, and I'm gonna show you just how to do it. Now, once you're past the first group of enemies and through the door you need to bust through, there's a rack of infinite thundersticks that can be used to blow through the next door. Once it's blown open, go back and grab another one, then head inside and huck it over the railing, making sure to arc it down and onto the pump. It's literally as simple as that. I chose to rush through this camp as I didn't really want to spend any more time here than I needed to, and I was really only here for the Scrapulants. But the threat reduction was a nice cherry on top. Once the scrap was back safe and sound at Jeets, I finally took off towards Dead Baron's Pass.
Oh, I'm gonna die.
And if you're efficient in your routing with DBP, you can essentially get through it and up to the top while only having to deal with the 2 snipers along the way. Once I had eyes on the Jaw, I could get back down to Chum and the Opus and, once again, disregard my main objective to accomplish something for a future request. And surely this won't be the last time I do this either. Indeed, I was off to Rimjobby's Top Dog camp to take him out and secure myself a paint job I'd eventually need to complete the Speed Demon later down the line. Are you seeing a pattern here? Anyways, on my relaxing drive over there, gravity came knocking once again, stomping my face into the curb of demise. And to say that getting through this camp and up to Rimjobby was a difficult process would certainly be an understatement. The jankiness of the fighting mechanics of this game and the one-hit KO mod I installed made for a grueling and nearly endless compilation of me failing my way forward enough to eventually get up to Rimjobby. Now, after all that pain and suffering just to get up here, I was feeling pretty loose and fired up, which translated to Rimjobby clearly not being ready for me.
First try. I'm calling it right now.
The next target camp in my sights was Overlook. It was just down the hill and around the corner from the camp I just liberated, so this should be a simple enough trek over there, right?
No, sniper.
Alright, guess not. Regardless of this misstep, I'd spawn back over at Jeets and could simply drive back over there and bust inside by simply climbing the rocks next to the gate. In reality though, I'm really only here for the Scrapulants, so upon entering, I pretty much just sprinted my way through it, avoiding any semblance of combat, hopped into the park treasure trove, and booked it out of there and back to Jeets. Once I'm back, I now have plenty of scrap and I can build up everything for the Jack that I have access to right now, then continue the main story. After collecting the Wasteland missions to both rescue Dinky D and Blazcap, I could head back out to the Wastelands and begin my search for the shovel-faced car body. And thankfully, this car body is also relatively close to where I would find and rescue Blazcap, so after securing the car body, that's what I go and do. After masterfully dodging several punches and bear traps along the way through the tunnels leading to him, I find him locked in a cage guarded by several enemies. Somehow, I managed to take out all 4 of them without them even laying a finger on me, allowing me the freedom to release Blazcap from his cage. Now, completing this Wasteland mission specifically rewards me in 2 separate ways. 1, it'll keep me supplied with ammo anytime I needed it by simply visiting Jeets, albeit there is a cooldown. And the second thing it does for me is finish 1/3 of a prerequisite blocking a path forward in the late game. The latter also goes for the very next thing on my list of to-dos, retrieving Dinky D from the Sanctum. Simple enough task, guys. Grab the dog, drive to Jeets. Come on, you know this by now. Once I'd returned to Jeets safely with the buggy and Dinky D in tow, I could build the 2 projects I'd just acquired access to and proceed to install the second to the last part for the Jack. The last part, some welding wire, would be found at Gut Gashes. And so after a short drive over there, we can simply loot it off the shelf and complete the Jack. Nice. But now it was Gut Gashes' turn to boss me around. Well, I guess it's more like asking me to do a favor as payment for the favor I'm asking of him, but whatever. In order for him to fashion the weapon I was asking for, he first wanted a hood ornament from a dude named Dimrim, and I guess I was the guy for the job. Dimrim ran a convoy just east of Gut Gashes, and if I could take him down and bring back this ornament, Gut Gash would make me my requested Thunderboons. And to be honest, I'd already died quite a bit from some really dumb things while driving around in the Opus, so I was expecting this fight to be fairly fucking difficult. But, in all honesty, it only took a few attempts. And the hardest part of all of this was trying to maintain control of the Opus, as the Hooning mod I installed makes this thing a bit more squirrelier than a kid fresh out of boot camp in his new Mustang GT. After returning to Gut Gashes and giving him what he'd asked for, I could head back over to Jeets and get this new weapon installed. After a quick test run, Chum and I were now ready for the Jaw. Now, the Jaw is actually extremely simple, if you know how to manipulate the game. If you don't, that's okay. I'm going to explain it now. So, after eliminating the 3 Thunderstick launchers with the supply of Thunderboons you start with, the game will begin continuously restocking your ammo anytime they run empty. So, getting through this part was more or less just driving around the arena, avoiding Thundersticks, cars, and sniper rounds as Chum delivered boom after boom to each new target. Once the launchers were down, we focused the cars, and after they were no longer on us, we shot down the 2 locks, then pulled the door with the harpoon, tore that son of a bitch down, and blasted off into freedom. After breaking into Pink Eye's territory, I took out the few lead slingers to progress the challenge I was working on, as well as some minor threat reduction. However, instead of going straight over to the stronghold currently under attack, I stopped off to try and do the speedrunning strat for the one-shot Havoc point clear, but I didn't end up finding the mark, so I abandoned that to go up and rescue Pink Eye. Now, the initial 5 cars I needed to destroy were more of a challenge than I originally expected, even though this probably would have been over a lot fucking sooner had I not been goofing around on stream. But anyways, after they were blown to bits, I moved on to destroying the catapults, which were really easy enough.
No, cool guys don't look at explosions.
And once the doors were opened up to get inside, I booked it straight past the Legion's goons and up into a hole in the wall I could crawl through and get inside. So for this fight, my chat thought it would take me 6 fucking tries to complete. Well, guess what, nerds? It only took me 3. Suck it.
You didn't see that coming, did you? 7 attempts? You thought 7? Think again! Sorry, that's a bit. I'm sorry. Cut that. Out of here.
Now that our stronghold is safe, I could now head on to Gastown to continue my search for the Black on Black. Before heading all the way over there though, I had an important side mission to take care of first. And yes, of course, I'm talking about the Top Dog camp in Rotten Rusty's. This camp is the absolute fucking goat for reducing Pink Eye's threat level quickly. And after I found that piece of information out, I always make an effort to do it. Now, even on any normal playthrough, this camp can be a hassle and a half to get through. There's just multiple hard choke points and plenty of enemies getting in my way and or killing me. The very first obstacle I'd come to was a door in need of exploding. There were also around 4 enemies or so in this small area, and I'd have to bait the first guy into whiffing a punch on me so I'd have enough time to grab one of the 2 gas cans lying on the ground. After narrowly dying trying to get the door exploded, I needed to then run through the door and down the next hallway, finally making it into another wide open area with dozens of enemies and a war crier waiting for me. Now, in here, there's a door that needed to be either bashed or shot at to get through, and I really only had enough time to shoot it, so I did. After successfully making it through this door, I could then climb my way up to the valve to shut off the fire blocking my path. And it was here that I found that the traditional way down wasn't at all safe enough to traverse, so I ended up going back down the way I came from and forcefully shoved my way through the crowd of enemies and up the stairs into the next room over. Now, somehow, after climbing these stairs, I'd find that barely touching these little fire barrel props lying around with even just your big toe will eventually damage Max enough to kill him, which is exactly what happened here. But by the grace of God, I hit a checkpoint upon reaching the stairs and I could pick back up nearly exactly where I left off. From here, I needed to make my way through some tunnels that I'd find some ammo in, as well as a few ferals and a door that needed exploding. I knew that there was a gas can located in the back corner room that I'd planned to use to blow this door up, but I also didn't really want to deal with the sporadic nature of these ferals. So, after bashing through this first door, I decked the first enemy I'd see, then made a break for that gas can. I'd make it to the gas can safely and then nearly to my target door, but a goddamn feral would spring out from behind the corner like some sort of shitty Halloween decoration, putting a stop to my crusade. However, my next go around would go nearly flawlessly, except for the fact that after I blew up the door, its scrap was now in my way, but it would eventually despawn after a few seconds and I could pass through and onto my fight with the top dog. My chat had this running gag at this point where they would guess how many attempts it would take for me to complete a boss or a difficult section in this game, and for this one, I was determined to reveal to them my true potential. So, after promising them a success on the very first try, I locked the fuck in and went to work strategically whittling his health down to 0. Oh, and one other super notable thing about this fight was my eventual discovery on how to toggle my HUD on and off, which, as I said earlier, ended up being super pivotal to the difficulty of this run, as you can imagine. And this moment took me by complete surprise during the fight. I thought I was tripping.
I fucking called that! Woo! First try! Fuck you!
Well, now that I knew how to turn that shit off, I made sure to keep it that way. So, in addition to my HUD being gone, like I explained earlier, I also no longer have the big ass button prompt for attacks that I'm able to parry. Well, actually, I had 0 prompts for any attacks for that matter. And with this single revelation, this second half of the game will be altered in so many more ways than you can even imagine. Now that I'd wrapped up that camp, I was now officially back on my path to Gastown. So, using the flare, I called Chum over to me and...
Bring me my obits!
Anyways, onward to Gastown. Wait, actually, before we head over there, I wanted to stop off at the balloon real quick, just in case I needed it, but also I wanted to grab the 2 project parts I'd need later for Deep Fry's Stronghold. I promise, we'll get to Gastown eventually. Now, once I'd collected everything I wanted from the dump region, I was still not headed for Gastown. Stay with me. In fact, I was going the complete opposite direction. I was going to Freya. Again, I'm coming here preemptively to complete some things that Hope will eventually ask of me later. So, I built the 2 project parts here, then talked to Chum to acquire another easily accomplishable Wasteland mission, and this one was about him getting his Holy Wrench back. And I'm sure y'all are plenty familiar with this one by now. Thankfully, this shit is right outside of Gastown, so before stopping in there, I went down some pipes and collected dear old Chum's Holy Wrench. Once that was done, I could finally enter Gastown and speak with the Outcrier. Home Dude wanted us to get some dangly lighties, or as I'd call them, Christmas lights, and the only known place that there would possibly be any of these in was called the Underdune, aka the Buzzard's home. There's no telling what goes on down there, but I'm about to find out. Before entering the Underdune, I upgraded the Opus as much as I could to resemble the Speed Demon, as it's badass looking, and I'll need to do it in the future anyways. I genuinely had no issues getting down into the shop where I'd find the lighties, so let's just get to the part where I get my shit pushed in for a solid 8 minutes by the hordes of buzzards who'd lock me in here. Keep in mind, I can no longer see which attack is parryable or when I can even parry an attack, and at this point in the game, there are now moves that the enemies will do that are absolutely not blockable by any means. Anyways, I eventually studied this fight enough times over that I came up with a solution. The main focus from the very beginning was to get a double kill off rip with the blast from my shotgun to start the fight off. From here, I would next begin working on taking out all the ferals in the arena. This was due to them being so damn unpredictable, and the fact that they have an unblockable attack and it's way less telegraphed than any of the normal buzzard goons, they were a priority on my hit list. Once the initial ferals were disposed of, some more would eventually come crawling through the cracks in the walls, and carefully, I made sure to deal with them as quickly as possible. Luckily, they make it easier for me, as they have much less health than anyone else. After there are no more ferals around, I begin cautiously taking on fights with any enemies within arm's reach, managing to barely pull off some clutch last-second parries in there as well. My calls for the magic door to open were eventually heard, but it was almost immediately shut down by some idiots blocking the door. Thankfully, a super lucky roll was in the cards for me, and I was free to get back into the Opus and secure another checkpoint. Thank God. After escaping the Underdune's clutches, I traveled over and back to Gastown to deliver the goods to the Outcrier. Afterwards, being told to pay a visit to Crowdazzle to ask him what to do next. Except, we aren't going to go up there just yet. That'd be a waste of time. We still have some threat to reduce in Pink Eye's territory. Now, I can't remember the name of this camp, and it's not in the footage since, the HUD is turned off, but the one camp that has an oil pump that way down at the bottom of it, it's like a cave type thing, it's got like an elevator and shit to get out. Anyways, that's the camp I went to in order to reduce the rest of this threat down to 3. I think it was called Stone something. Either way, I figured it would be an easy enough camp, being an oil pump camp and all. Well, while it is true that the exploding portion of it was easy, the hard part was figuring out how I could lure this first group of enemies away from the door blocking my path long enough for me to break it down without them killing me. But I eventually solved that dilemma, made my way down into the cave, and cleared the camp. Whatever its name is. And after all that was taken care of, I still had the tiniest sliver of threat left to reduce. And so I figured I deserved to take the easy route for once in my life and down the first scarecrow I'd see. Well, turns out this scarecrow was actually one of the tougher ones, and it's because it's in kind of a super weird location, making it hard to ram with the Opus. And on top of that, I also had 2 goons in their cars trying to ram me into oblivion, all while I attempted to do all this. Finally, I'd gotten her threat level down to 3, and I could go back to see Crowdazzle and Tenderloin to strike a deal between the 2 of them. Also, confirming here multiple times that those fire barrels do indeed harm you slightly, which meant death for me. Okay, after validating all that, all I needed now was some moolah. So, I went off hunting for it. I bounced around from camp to camp, trying to salvage whatever they had for scrap, and I think one of the mods I had installed only half worked, as I mentioned from the start, because the amount of scrap I was getting from these drops were abysmal compared to what I'm used to. Either way, this was proving to be an incredibly unlucrative process. Then I remembered, I had a failsafe mod that I installed for this specific reason. Now, I didn't know how broken this mod would be, to be fair, but the respawning Scrapulence mod was my saving grace here. Needing 600 more scrap to upgrade the Opus to the Speed Demon fully, I went to the Overlook camp to check on their Scrapulence spawn location, and lo and behold, there it was. But here's why it's broken. See, immediately after turning in the scrap to cheats, I went back to that same exact camp, and there was already another spawned in. Now, in order not to abuse this, these will be the last 2 Scrapulances I'll be turning in for the rest of the run. Once I've gotten the Speed Demon built, I could head back over to Crowdazzle's and start the barrel race. And unfortunately, the 4th time's the charm with this one. Of course, it was almost ruined entirely. So, for some context, during this race, I was switching between my mouse and keyboard and my controller, since I found that I have much more control on my keyboard as far as the turning goes. Well, the problem with this was that I wanted to do this race fully with just my mouse and keyboard, but apparently the game didn't like my plan and would randomly decide to disable my A and D keys while I was driving, leading me to have to quickly swap between my controller at certain points throughout this race, leading to this happening in my winning attempt.
Keyboard about stop working.
Before continuing on, I figured it would be a wise choice to pay another visit to Griffa and spend whatever points I'd accumulated thus far. And after all this, I still didn't have enough legend rank to progress into the next part of the story. Your boy still had 7 more challenges to complete. So now I had to go about figuring out which challenges were going to be the easiest to accomplish. And of course, the ones I'm closest to finishing, pretty much all of them involve some kind of combat, which totally makes sense. It's just that combat is a bit difficult at the moment. I left the dump to go back over to Pink Eye's territory to see if any Scrotus camps had any warboys lurking in it that needed a good mouth punch. The first camp I'd come across was my absolute least favorite camp in the entire game, but it's what I had. After some fooling around and not really getting anywhere here, I eventually cut my losses and squirreled off after a convoy that was just passing through. After dealing with him, I found myself in extreme danger, so I bailed on anything I had going for me here and sped off into safety. And this path led me straight into a recognizable location. Yes, this was the site of a wasteland mission that I've done in previous runs. But what was unique about it, and why did I care? Well, it was full of buzzards, and I was only 4 of them away from completing another challenge. And I figured, this should be easy enough. It wasn't. I fought tooth and nail against myself here, doing the same stupid shit over and over again, not really gaining any ground. Eventually, I had the bright idea to use the Opus's harpoon to take them out, as it would be much safer. But, unfortunately, those don't count towards this challenge. Okay. But after taking out a few of them with the harpoon, the area was actually clear enough now that I could go in and take out the one remaining guy in here and finally finish the challenge. I then went back over to Havoc Point and tried and cash in on one of the remaining Thunderstick impalings that I needed to do, and possibly also the kill X amount of Warboys one as well. Unfortunately, Havoc Point is a difficult camp, even under normal circumstances. So eventually, I hatched a plan to use up all the Thundersticks lying around in the closest Warboys to me, then bail the hell out of there and move on to another challenge. Except, getting back to the Opus was another challenge in and of itself.
Get in!
But I'd eventually get my Thunderpoon kill, exit the camp, get into the Opus safely, and boost out of there just in time to freedom. And this is how that felt.
Okay, we're good. We're good. We're free.
From here, I headed back to Gutgash's territory, as I knew I was more likely to find some enemy vehicles to Thunderpoon to death here. And if there were any Scrotus vehicles lurking around, I'd also be able to knock out 2 challenges at once, since I certainly had enough ammo to do both. For the Thunderpoon challenge, I just needed to take out 4 more general vehicles, but if 2 of them happened to be Scrotus's vehicles, that'd be fine by me. I eventually came across the convoy here, and I couldn't have asked for better odds. So I let you think. After taking it down, I actually still had 1 more Scrotus vehicles to find and blow up. I figured I'd come across one eventually, so I turned my attention to riding up one of the last balloons I needed to claim that challenge, and at this point, I was well on my way to becoming Gas Guzzler. Just 4 more challenges to go. Oh, and I was also able to take out a disabled Scrotus vehicle on my way away from this balloon, so now it was down to 3. The next closest challenge to complete was to take out 3 more Warboys, so I went around searching for a small group of them to yeet off this earth. I drove around to another balloon nearby that I found no one there, but on my way down the hill from it, there was a small group of enemies. Just what I needed. I stopped, got out, and tried to fire my shotgun, but Max is just way too slow, ending with him collapsing to the ground. Now, this is where the run gets a little weird for a little while, with no explanation. Yet. When I loaded back in from this death, I found myself back at Crowdazzle's, standing in front of Tenderloin. Okay, red flag. I paused to look at my legend rank, and I was still rank 7. Okay, So the progress isn't gone. Good. But also, weirdly enough, the game says that I didn't complete the balloon challenge yet. Second red flag. After exiting the pause screen though, my HUD was still active since I needed to see the menus, and I see that my current mission was to speak to Crodazzle. So I do. But the cutscene is about Tenderloin's death? Then it hit me. I was back before the barrel race. What the fuck is happening? Shrugging this off as just some WB jank, I pressed on my path of challenge farming. The one good thing from all this fuckery is that some of the easier challenges that I've already done, I get to do again. Like the balloon one, for instance. So that's good, I guess. So I'd eventually get to Gas Guzzler, upgrade to the Speed Demon, win the barrel race, and I'm finally back to where I was, with the exception of my new legend rank. I can finally move on. Now it's time for the Stank Gum race. And this race, this time, hey, no joke, absolute cakewalk. However, Tenderloin, with no HUD nor parry indicators, was kinda whack as shit. There were many trials when it came to this fight with Tenderloin. I'm sure someone from the stream can attest to this in a comment below. However, eventually, my brain began to wrinkle. From what I could recall, Tenderloin had 2 moves that you could parry and 1 move that you couldn't. However, one of the 2 parryable moves had a precursor move that I couldn't. So, to win that one, you just need to avoid the very first swipe. But this could be used as a tell if you read it correctly. Now, rolling is the cut and dry way to avoid this outright, but the animation is just so long that you'll usually miss the parry window. So, instead, I developed a way to fairly consistently bait this first move out by simply standing still. Now, once she would get close enough, I began my run backwards away from her, and you kinda have to beat her to the punch when it comes to the timing of it, but once that first swipe is avoided, your parry window is now open and you can begin laying into her until she begins blocking again. Do this enough times flawlessly and without being hit, and she's down. And now it's on to Scrotus, who is a much easier fight than old Tenderloins. The weapons scattered around this arena, as always, make this fight child's play. And even the second phase is relatively easy, though after my first death, there were no longer any melee weapons on the battlefield, so I had to go raw hand-to-hand combat with the old scrope bag. Thankfully, due to all my prep earlier, I have no barriers of entry with Hope, and she just lets me through the locked door to Stankgum's Big Chief. To easily get past this first wave of enemies, I simply lured them around the shacks that were built down here, then climbed the ladder back over to the other side, grabbed the gas can off the ground, and blasted through to the other side. The fight with Stankgum's goons were dealt with fairly easily as well, seeing as I had plenty of ammo to negotiate some collaterals with. After they were all dead, I could simply gas up the lift holding the chief, get inside, and take her off to Freya's to gut it for its V8. And now we were gearing up for the finale. And this is where shit gets loony. We're in search of glory out in the Buzzard territory, bringing us back to the Underdune. Upon getting down there, there are a couple of fights with the Buzzards I'd need to fight off, each of which having their own trials and tribulations. But let's be real, it was mostly me just being greedy and impatient. Once I'd cleared the first group and checked their hole, giggity, I didn't find glory. Wait a minute. Glory in a hole. Glory hole. I am just now getting that. That's hilarious. Anyways, so I didn't find glory, so I kept going deeper, exploring even more of these dudes' holes. One of these 2 holes in the next room I checked was unguarded, which was a nice bonus, but the other one had a group of 4 waiting to have their turn with it. I emasculated them with ease, checked the hole to find nothing but bones, nice, then I was off to find and check the third one, until I heard a little girl scream off in the distance. I followed the sound until I'd eventually find glory, but now we had to get out of here. And with Chum taking off in the Opus earlier, we had no car to our name. That was until some buzzards showed up to fix our problem, but also becoming our new problem in the process. And let me just tell you guys, this segment right here will forever go down in my channel's history. It's truly just a testament of how stubborn I really am when it comes to these challenges. Now let me be clear, If I'm in the middle of doing a challenge and I fuck up somehow and do something stupid that makes the game even harder but still doable, I'm generally gonna stick with it. Because A, it makes the game more challenging, and B, it's my fault, I must suffer. Anyways, in this case, I wasn't willing to backtrack just to go refill my ammo and make my life easier, so instead I'd plan to stay up all night grinding my teeth through this fight if I had to. Sparing you of all of the pitiful details, I'll just get to how I ended up winning. If you really want to see the whole thing, I have a streams playlist you could find it in. So, how did I eventually pull off this fight? Well, my strategy was to leave all of the initial little guys alive, since if I took them out, more would just spawn in. And some of which would be ferals, which I really didn't want to deal with. So I basically just spent my time playing patty cake with the horde of, eight buzzard dudes while waiting for the big guy whose stream named Top Spike to come charging at me. As he would swing, much like the top dogs do, I would roll away to dodge and then come at him with a flurry of punches. Except, here, there's more dudes around me than a Friday night at your mom's house. So I can really only safely get in like 1 or 2 solid punches before I had to roll away again. This makes this fight excruciatingly tedious. And one single slip up can cost you the entire fight and all of your progress. Anyways, in the end, it really only ended up being a lot of kiting and careful concentration. And willpower. Can't forget willpower. Oh yeah, and there was even a moment here where I managed to take out the Top Spike, but failed to realize that the fight wasn't over. And mid-celebration, I had my nuts crushed. This was absolutely soul-crushing, yes, but it didn't stop. I kept on going for a total of 2 hours and 34 minutes straight. I battled for my life through this fight, and at one point may or may not have taken a 10 milligram special supplement, which may or may not have added another layer of challenge. Oh, and sure, maybe another one about an hour after that. Who's to say? Anyways, I had eventually thoroughly crushed this segment as well as my spirit, but Glory and I were finally free to get back to Freya's, and thankfully do so without incident. We were so close now. We just needed to stop off at the Sanctum and crush Stankum to the ground and get information on where Scrotus was hiding. Though, Stankum isn't as easy as you'd think. See, he, like Tenderloin, has one attack that I can parry and one that I can't, or something like that. And they look fairly similar. For better or for worse, I basically just turned this game into a Souls-like. My main objective is just to look for telegraphed attacks and tell signs from my opponent. However, there is a slight cheese that I can use in this fight. I found out in a past run that if you try and aim directly at Stankum and shoot your shotgun, he will just end up avoiding it no matter what. But if you aim at one of his goons while he's in the direct line of fire, he won't. Thanks again to the speedrunning community for this information. These shots do massive damage too. It's absolutely worth it to try and land as many as you possibly can. With a little bit of luck, this is how my fight with Stankum was won. Now that he was gone and dealt with, I could do the incredibly technical Chumbucket dialogue skip so that I could be respawned back at Jeets for an ammo top-off and instantly fast travel back to Gastown without having to wait for him to stop yapping. Yes, of course, I needed to go to Freya's, but their stronghold isn't able to be fast traveled to right now, so Gastown was the next closest option. Once I'd skipped past all the cutscenes, I get to do one last technical dialogue skip to make up for all that time in the Underdune. Then I could fast travel to Gastown once again, speak with the Blood Bag, and finally begin the finale of this godforsaken game.
Blood Bag!
Okay, so the Land Mover fight. This fight, in my opinion, isn't really all that hard. Generally. Now, stacking the uncontrollable Opus Hooning mod on top of the one-hit mod moves it into a completely different category. Though, still, certainly, the on-foot fights are much harder by far. And the key to the sequence was to rip as many warboys out of their vehicles as possible with the harpoon, as to conserve as much ammo as possible for the armored ones. And for even some of those, I'd ram them enough to shed that armor, and then I'd rip their door and yank them from their seats. There was still plenty of BS that would somehow put an end to me over the course of my attempts, but eventually I'd had enough practice under my belt that I'd have a near flawless run at the Land Mover, and finally got to move on to the final showdown. I ended up missing my first couple thundersticks here, but eventually clocked the correct angle. And after raining down those 2 explosions upon Scrotus, he was done and the challenge was finally fucking over.
We are done.
As for an outro to this video, I really don't have a whole lot to say other than catch me when I live stream these runs on both YouTube and Twitch. It was an absolute blast having everyone there for this one and made my suffering way less intense. Anyways, love y'all, catch y'all in the next one. Bye-bye.
Look at his little horn dick. Fuck you.